When a Stranger Calls, 2006 in-depth horror discussion review where we break it down scene by scene. This is intended for if you already seen it.
Alright, this is the remake based off the first opening scene, the first 10 minutes of When a Stranger Calls, the 1979 crime drama. It was more of like a crime suspense thriller than a horror. They just took the opening scene with the babysitter and turned it into a full movie. And they did a pretty good job with the script. This is like intended for, there's like little gore in this movie. This is intended for like 16-year-old teeny boppers and everything.
Nah, it's for
so
13-year-olds.
if you get past that part.
Nah, it's for 13-year-olds.
It's got a lot of good suspense and creative writing in it though. So let's just jump right into this.
PG-13, you know.
It opens up with Screen Gems.
Alright, scene 1. Screen Gems. All in blue, and it's
company
dope.
That's been around since 1940.
It's a dope logo, all in blue. And then it cuts to like the
and
house.
right when it's doing it, it starts the phone ring. And I like when they do the logo of the movie, and then they already
starting the movie.
The dialogue of the movie.
So the phone rings and it cuts.
Oh,
to
you
the
know
outside.
when you're in the movie theaters and like the opening part starts, and then everyone's still talking in the movie theater, and it totally ruins it.
And you're like, shut up.
Exactly.
Okay,
so
anyways,
anyway, the phone starts ringing.
And it's the shot outside of the house showing the house, and then it also pans to the fair behind it.
As we know, yeah. And then the
as we know.
And then the stranger's just like, "Are you Liz?"
He's like, yeah. She's like,
"No, this is Tracy." And he's like, "Oh."
And then he's like, "Who are you?"
And then it just cuts. This is when it cuts to the subdivision amusement park behind the subdivision.
And it's like showing all the shots of like the Ferris wheel and the whole fair in like slow motion kind of, and like the carousel.
While it's running the credits, and he's like stalking the bitch, and you could hear her like dying like throughout it.
So basically, at the first part of the movie, it's showing like the first murder that this guy did, or like one of the murders, that he did.
So anyways, serial stalker. We don't get to see that. So then it cuts to the next day. That was at night, and it cuts to the next day. And it's like the red balloon that they show up.
I gotta say though, it's still filler, like a 4 minutes showing the fair and everything, and cutting to the house, and finally her getting killed. But anyways,
we'll get to plenty of.
So it cuts to the next day. It cuts to the next day, and it's kids running across the street, and then a cop zooms past them right afterwards.
Yeah, it's the crime scene.
And you're like, okay. But anyways, they go to the crime scene, and the main cop shows up, and he's just like, all right,
one of the extra cops is just like, there's no murder weapon.
He's like, you're growing a beard.
That's the thing.
He's like, you kind of look like, and the cop cuts him off, and he's like, yeah, I look like fat, shit, drunk. Yeah, I know. And anyway, he's like, where am I walking up? And he walks upstairs, and then the cop that's leading him up there freaking puts his hand on the rail and totally contaminates the scene.
So anyway, they don't show the crime scene.
Wow, you don't laugh at it, JBM 2005? I thought it was a good one.
We're moving on with this one.
Anyway, so he gets up there, and he hands him the gloves. He's like, you need gloves. And it's all, the body's completely like knifed up and shredded, obviously, because the way they're talking.
Yeah, so they don't show the murder scene because it's PG-13.
Yeah, it's whack. They don't even show it, but
this is even PG-13 before they start using like ass and bitch in movies and shit.
Hold up. Also, when it cut before the Ferris wheel in the house, it showed the red balloon that faded away, and then when it cut to the morning, it showed the balloon pop there.
Of course, you weren't listening when I said it. So anyway,
well then I'm an asshole.
He's an ass.
So then it cuts to...
Just leave it. No, it cuts to Fern Hill, Colorado, 125 miles away.
Set on the screen, yeah.
And it's what's her name? Camilla Belle, 06. Freaking...
Yeah, it cuts to her... No,
she's running laps.
It cuts to her in high school, and
they establish her character like, hey, she's athletic.
She's the tough girl. Like, she's running the lap, and then she has this stupid conversation with the teacher, and she's like, come on,
could hold her
you
own.
think of something in the distance, and she's like, I know, and run like there's nothing else. And it's freaking retarded.
And she also looks down at her boyfriend, but we don't know it at the time.
Wow.
And they're going through a breakup or whatever.
They're going through a breakup?
No, so then
way.
Then it's the high school hallway scene.
Cuts to her at her locker, and she's like looking at her cell phone, and her teacher walks by, and
no,
she's
and
like,
it got shut down.
She's like, oh, and she
got shut down for going over her minutes. It's like,
she tries to hide
disconnected.
It. But anyways, and then her boyfriend comes up, and he's like,
let's talk. She's like, we did talk.
She's
like, and then he's like, oh, come on, she kissed me. Like a bunch of cliche lines like, hey, she's like, you cheated on me with my best friend.
And she's like, hey, you let her kiss you.
So then it cuts from that to the art room. No, and the guy who played Bobby, her boyfriend in this, was like 32 when they filmed this in high school.
Oh yeah, he's 32 and he's playing a high school senior. But no, they go to the art room right after that, out of the hallway scene, and freaking she's talking to her black friend. No, it's not even. It's like not even a high school art room. It's like a total set. Like they put paint everywhere on the walls.
Brought everything in. Brought a bunch of shitty artwork in. They're like, hey,
we need canvases.
High school art room.
Hey, order up some canvases. All right, anyways, so freaking she's talking to her black chick friend. Glazed. Bongs being glazed. All right, so freaking.
No, she's like, I'm grounded. She's like, because you went over your minutes. Oh, come on. And then when they're in the middle of talking, that's when Cassidy, 05, smoking hot. I say 05 because they filmed this in 05 when they were both 18.
She shows up and she's like, hey guys. And they're both looking at her like, oh no.
She just ignores her because she made out with her boyfriend.
And it's like awkward silence. And the black chick's like, guys, we're friends.
So boring.
She's like, this is just high school ball.
No, so then it cuts and she's walking out of the high school. It's the end of the day and she's in a skirt. This is like one of the only scenes where you get to see her wearing something other than the iconic pink shirt that you always see in the trailer and throughout the movie.
Oh, hold up! Also, she tells that the story of that her minutes have been she's been grounded for going over minutes, but now she says she has to babysit that night. Yeah. So that establishes the next scene with her parents and their dad dropping her off.
She can't go out to the high school keg because she has to babysit and she's grounded. They're making her work it off.
Oh yeah, so we'll talk about that stupid high school keg. All right, go.
And it cuts to the drive out to the house with her dad. And who's like the guy from S.H.I.E.L.D., the Marvel
And it's
movies.
like the hardcore dad and like young daughter talking. He's like,
beautiful scenery.
She's like, it wasn't even like that. I did wait after 8 to talk.
You went over by 800
minutes. He's like, I know, honey, I know, but you're grounded.
She's like, I know, but I've never done it before. Hey, it's not fair.
He's like, no car, no phone for a month, okay?
It is fair. No, anyway, so it's nice scenery.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. No, and also
there was a wildfire. I guess. There was a wildfire. If you listen to the director commentary, he talks like there was a wildfire in there.
Yeah, so you can see all the burned trees and everything where they're traveling on the rocky part of the drive of the highway. It's pretty dope. And you can see all the burnt pine trees. It's tight.
And then he's like, "Are you gonna be okay?" And she's like, "It depends on if they have TiVo."
No.
Hardcore 06 movie line.
Is that what she said?
Yeah,
I didn't hear that line.
They put that in every freaking movie script in the mid-2000s.
Sort of like how 2011 now, all the movies are like making texting jokes and all that.
And Facebook books. They work Facebook and Twitter into little scripts nowadays, like off the butt.
Meet the Fockers, the little Fockers. They got all that stupid texting jokes with Rob De Niro.
So anyway, they make it up to the house. It's the outside shot of the house. I guess they made this far. They made this house from scratch. They picked the location on the pond, and it came out beautiful. They made it modern instead of doing the old Amityville creepy style house.
Dude, the way the shots, it cuts to the shots of the houses on the outside, and it's the lake,
and it's the pond in front.
It's just so sick with all the cattails and just the beautiful scenery surrounding it.
Secluded as hell. And just sets the scene.
And the house by itself is just gorgeous with all that glassware on the outsides. Just freaking all the sides. It's gorgeous.
And then she walks around the wraparound porch. It's awesome.
And Dad's like, all right, well, call me if you need anything.
Yeah, so he was like, we're going to be gone too, so call my cell phone if you need anything. Anyway, so this is the scene where she meets the Mandrakis. Mr.
Mandrakis answers the door.
He's a doctor.
He answers the door.
Oh, and her dad was also like, oh, I wish I should have been a doctor.
He's like, I should have been a doctor.
Total white guy line that they threw in the script.
Total dad line. If your dad said it. Anyway, so freaking...
And then Mrs. Mandrakis was like, you come highly recommended by the Thompsons.
She's like, yeah,
we're gonna be
great.
Cakewalk.
She's like, the Thompsons are great. She's like, all right, well, here's
can handle them.
No, and then it's the filler of her showing her around the house. She's like, yep, here's our biodome garden. And she's like, here's our birds.
Yeah, I don't know what those are called exactly.
And then they show the shot of the cat, too. It's tight, the black cat.
And it shows the carp fish that you see at Cedar Lake and Cedar Point and Six Flags and
which
stuff.
Makes this house even more,
orange carp.
Even more badass, Anyway, so it's the filler walking around the house. And then
then it's a bunch of cheap artwork. They move the whole set design from the high school art room into their house and and try to pass it off as being expensive shit. And it was just pottery that you see.
Since it's been
handmade pottery.
It's been when a stranger calls, though, they could probably sell it for some high class stuff now.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
no, so anyway. No,
it was pretty good. Okay, so anyway, then she's like, did we forget anything?
The lack of gore sucked.
She's like, the wife's like, did we forget anything? And she's like,
the wife gives her the list.
The kids.
The wife gives her the list. She looks like April O'Neil. And she's like, the
No.
maid's usually gone.
No,
you know?
not even
No,
close.
she's like,
she doesn't even look like April O'Neil. Okay, go on.
yeah, an older version of April O'Neil from
Go
the
on.
Ninja Turtles.
Go on.
Anyway, so she's like, the children are upstairs. Oh, they're
Yes.
sick. So I put them to bed early, and it's like 5 o'clock.
I know, it's like already still daylight out, and she's like, they're in bed.
She's like, oh, also my son in college stays at the
lake house,
at the guest
right,
house.
at the guest house out there.
So,
Oh yeah, she's like, did we forget anything?
So
The husband-
dinner at 8, and
The guest
we might
house.
catch a movie, and we'll be back by midnight.
Is that okay with you? And she's like, oh yeah, that's fine, sure, I'm grounded, so yeah.
So then it
So
all right,
then they
replay
leave.
the soundtrack.
So they leave. Wow,
so-
he's got to cue me.
Cue the filler. No, it turns to dark and it shows outside
Oh yeah,
shots of the
no,
house.
they leave and it's the outside of the house. No, and then it's her reading the book.
All right, round
She
1 to
sits down.
fill her up the.
Oh yeah, she sits down and she starts reading.
She starts playing
reading
with all the
blue book.
controls.
No, she starts reading the blue book first, right when they leave. She sits down and reads the blue book, or she lays down and then wakes up.
Great. But then she plays with all the controls. She turns on the fireplace.
Turns on the
Of course,
music.
they had to have that scene like, oh, shit's high tech nowadays. Oh, they got more controls for fireplaces. Total
Also, they
filler.
showed her the alarm system though before they left. And that's a key thing. Anyway, so
Then the lights are on auto. They do that gay scene where she's like walking around the house. Then she hears a noise.
and
No,
she hears the first noise.
No,
and
she
she's-
starts putting on the jewelry. Da da da. We're not even. No comment. Anyway, so she hears the first noise.
Oh
and
yeah,
she calls
no,
for the
that's
maid.
no, we gotta say that because that's what makes it like a whole bunch of filler. Because she goes upstairs and tries on their jewelry and tries on a dress and then hears the noise and runs downstairs. But anyways, and then she's like, Rose.
Yeah,
look-
but it's
she's
Camilla
st-
Belle smoking hot.
They
though,
told her
so
that
it's
also
kinda-
Rose the maid, this Mexican maid works there too. So she goes downstairs and she's like and sits down like actually she's doing nothing. But then
No,
she's like,
she hears.
gets up
So
and
she
she's
hears
like,
the noise and she
and she's
calls
like,
for
Rose?
Rosa. She's like,
Rose.
Rosa, this is Jill the babysitter.
She's like, this is Jill the babysitter.
Of course, she repeated that line.
Like duh.
No, she finally runs into Rosa, and she's feeding the carp.
Yeah, she just sees her in the biodome garden.
It took
freaking
forever
feeding
for
the
her to
fish.
run
And she's
into
like, oh, there goes Rosa, always working in the garden. And then she goes back to sit down.
She sits down like, oh, I'm bored. Crosses her arms.
Like, yeah, there's nothing to do in this rich ass house. Okay, go on.
I know she was talking about TV, but no, they were like, oh, she already tried the controllers once, so she's not gonna try it ever again.
Yeah,
so
so
she
that's
doesn't
the
watch
first-
TV.
No, that's the first thing is that freaking jump scare lead up music to where she finds the maid, and you're like, okay. And then freaking, this is where we get
She
the first
sits down
phone
like
call.
a stuck-up bitch with her arms crossed. No, then we get the first phone call from the killer, from the stranger, I should say, and he's just breathing. Of course, we get no lines because it's a slow lead
And he
up.
says nothing, hangs
'Cause
up.
it's
she's
based
like,
off
okay.
the opening scene, like we said.
She
so they
goes
gotta
back to
draw it out.
reading filler, and it leads up to the jump scare of the cat.
The black cat.
And
Yeah.
she's like, okay. I mean, you're like, okay, this is total filler.
It's tight. You gotta have the black cat classic, but of course they just added the black cat.
I'm just saying how it
character
takes
in
forever
the
to
movie.
lead up. It takes forever to lead
Anyway,
up. while
so
she's
she
in the
calls her
reading.
black friend
She calls her black friend
while
she's
doing her
like-
homework. She's like doing her homework on a Friday night. She's like, "Give Bobby my number."
She's like, yeah. She's like, Bobby called. He wanted your number, and she's
She's like, "You should be talking to Tiffany."
she's like, I
my
don't want
best
you to fall
friend,
into
Katie Cassidy.
those blue eyes. Don't freaking trust him. She's like, are you freaking?
And now, then it cuts to the jacket's off, and she's now in the infamous pink shirt for the rest of the freaking movie.
Infamous pink shirt.
So then what happens? All right, we're gonna go to a part.
No, this is where she checks.
Let's
the
just
kids.
sum this up. The alarm
Oh,
goes
no,
off.
the black chick is
She
like,
doesn't
what are
check
no,
the
no, no, I'm
kids
saying
ever,
the
you
black,
idiot.
no, I'm saying the black chick, no, she's like, the chick is like, hey, how are the kids? She's like, I don't know, they're sleeping, you know, the conversation between them.
So-
Alright, well, we'll finish with this scene and then
So
part
the
two.
alarm goes off, and she gets a call from the company.
Alright, we'll start with
No,
that.
no, we're
freaking-
gonna sum this up because we got a bunch to go through. So she hung up. She hangs up with the phone company, and she's like, "We need you to identify yourself." Then we're gonna. All right, we're gonna. She's like, "I'm Jill, the babysitter." She's like, so then Mrs. Mandrakis calls. She's like, "Hey, the alarm company coming. I have to confirm your identity."
Wow, you're summing up way too much. First off, when that first
That's just
no,
one part.
I'm saying when that first alarm went off, that's when the killer entered in. You could tell. Freaking. All right, we'll freaking finish with this freaking in part two of the in-depth horror discussion review of When a Stranger Calls 2006.